Welcome to the official Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society's podcast. I'm your host, Barnaby, and you're listening to Whispers from the Dark. Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Whispers from the Dark. I am your host, Barnaby, and on today's show we have a special guest. We are going to be talking about some things that are more psychological and brain-wise today on the show. And our first guest today is Curio. How are you doing today, Curio?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good, good. It is a chilly April still. April morning out here, and we are sitting in a lovely park because it's a chilly, nice day, I suppose. So, I invited you on the show today because you have a very unique set of things going on, I guess. I don't know what you want to specifically call them.
Well, they're known as synesthesia, but there's different kinds of synesthesia, and I have Chromesthesia, which melds sound and sight.
Cool.
So pretty much when I hear sounds or hear music, certain sounds or voices or instruments have different patterns and colors that show up in my vision, mostly in my peripheral, but I don't know. I've just kind of had it my entire life.
When did you first start noticing, like, what was going through your head as far as, like, when you first started seeing it? What did you think was going on?
I don't know. I just always thought it was normal. Things started getting more vivid and more prominent, like, as I got older, especially when I hit puberty. I don't know.
So tell us a little bit more about it. Like, when you say you see sound, you see, like, the colors of it and stuff, right? So, like, do music or, like, a lot of people are familiar with, like, the audiograph and stuff, like, on computers. When you see the music play and stuff like that. Is it similar to that, or is it a solid color, or?
It can be solid. A lot of the times, depending on how the song sounds, a lot of times it'll be like, what's it called? Watercolor? Okay. Like, it looks like watercolor. Especially if I just have music more in the background while I'm doing something else, because I'm not really focused on the music, or the music isn't loud enough. When the music is louder, it becomes brighter or more opaque rather than, like, just a translucent.
Like, for people listening and stuff, when, like, you rub your eye and it kind of makes that, like, starburst effect. Is that kind of like what you're seeing, or?
Similar, yeah. I'd say, but it could be any color. Normally, like, when you rub your eye and the little color bubbles pop up in your vision, normally those are just, like, purple and red. But I mean, Chromesthesia could allow you to see any color. I don't know.
But you don't see it, like, straight ahead. It's just always to the edges of your eyes.
Most of the time, yeah. Especially if I'm just playing it in the background, or it's off in the distance, or it's super quiet. But if it's, like, someone talking right in front of me, or just something making noise right in front of my face and I'm focusing on it, it tends to be just, like, in the center. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Kinda. So, like, different people's voices and stuff are different colors, you said, right?
And patterns, yeah.
Patterns too.
Well, like, some of my friends have, like, sort of like more of a shimmering, like, iridescent effect. Some of them have, like, it looks like bubble wrap. I don't know if, like it looks bubbly and very, like, organized. Another one of my friends has just, like, it looks like my vision is just being painted over completely with just, like if like if my vision were just like a solid water slab and then you dip your paintbrush into it, you know how all the like colors rush through the water and start to change the entire water a certain color? It's kind of like that.
Like cleaning a paintbrush in water,
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other patterns. I've had just like more of like a striking, like sharp, like jagged. I don't know if any of this makes sense. I suck at explaining things.
Well, here's where I'm going with this. Let me explain to you what kind of Caps has been working on recently, and we'll see if this kind of matches up, because that's the reason why I wanted to ask you about this. So there's a lot of the visual light spectrum that we can't see, or I guess non-visual light spectrum, right? So the spectrum goes from radio waves, which are very low, wide waves of vibration or of light, I guess. And then it goes up and becomes infrared, and then it goes through the visual light spectrum that we can see are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And at the other end of the visual light spectrum, it becomes ultraviolet and goes up into the X-rays and gamma rays and stuff. So when we're looking at this spectrum, we have been working with like interdimensional beings and stuff lately. So UFOs, extraterrestrials, stuff like that. And we found some interesting stuff with these things that when you change your vibrational frequency yourself, you can astral project, or you can possibly transfer into other dimensions and stuff. So how this ties in with you is, if you're seeing different colors, is that the vibrational wave of those sounds?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Okay,
I've just like done very little research on chromesthesia. It's just something that I've always had that I think is kind of neat, that I share with like friends that I'm close with. Just like, oh hey, here's a fun fact about me. Your color, your voice color is orange, and then just, I don't know, they can question if they want to.
Well, let me be specific then. Have you noticed that people who have like or sounds, even any sound that are a lower, deeper sound like this, have a darker color, like a bluish purple color, like that end of the spectrum, as opposed to like higher pitched sounds or frequencies that would be on the reddish orange side? Sometimes,
yeah. But I think a lot of it is also just how I perceive the person.
Okay.
So somebody could have like the same pitch in voice but have two completely separate colors.
Okay.
I don't really know exactly what causes it. I just sometimes two of my male friends that have very similar pitches in voice, they just, I don't know, they just look completely different.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, this is all science, and it's all really interesting, and I hope it's interesting to our listeners as well, because this is not something that I've heard of before meeting you, and talking to you about this. And then, like I said, recently we've been starting to work on the visual light spectrum and that kind of stuff. So I was curious to see if you saw a pattern between the light and the frequency colors and stuff. But
just a little pattern, not like anything huge, I guess, but it would make sense that like the different frequencies would make different colors. I just don't really see that in my patterning.
So when this first started happening and stuff, did you actually like go to a doctor or like an optometrist to see if there was something wrong, or?
Growing up, I had a therapist, and I talked to my therapist a lot about all of my issues, and I think I brought it up briefly, and she asked me what I meant by it. So then I started to explain it to her, and she suggested to me chromesthesia, and that is a very real possibility. So we looked more into it, and I think we did a few sessions over the span of like 3 or 4 months just looking into it, and just kind of like trying to see what it actually is. And she seemed pretty confident in her answer. She just didn't really write it down anywhere. She didn't actually give me an official diagnosis, so I don't have it on paper or anything. But so I can't like confidently say it, but I mean, I went through therapy for it, so I don't think it's anything else. I don't know what it could possibly be otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I was curious because I was wondering if it was more of like an eye condition or if it was like a brain condition.
I feel like it's more of a brain condition. I don't know how it could be an eye condition. I've never had any like eye surgeries or eye injuries that would cause it. And I don't know. I don't really know my dad's side of the family anyway, so it could be genetic, but I don't think it's from my mom's side.
Yeah, I was gonna say you don't know anybody else in your family or anything that has it.
Not from my mom's side at least, but I don't really know my father, so.
It's interesting, like a lot of people might actually have this and not realize it because, if they're, like you said, if you thought it was just more normal when you were growing up in that, and until it actually got diagnosed because of accidentally bringing it up or something, a lot of people walking around seeing colors and just thinking it's normal, like, I don't know, I get blurry spots on the sides of my eyes once in a while, but not colors, but cool. Anything else to add on that?
I don't think so.
Cool. All right, we are going to take a quick break here, and we will be right back with Curio, and we are going to be talking about another topic. Whispers from the Dark will be right back after this quick message from our sponsors.
Do you want to do a real paranormal investigation of a well-documented haunted location? Here's your chance. Join our team as we continue the investigations of the Gainer Tavern, currently Bean Stamper's Gentleman Club in Mackville, Wisconsin.
Originally built in 1877, the building was served as a general store, blacksmith shop, tavern, post office, dance hall, and bar. The building was originally built by Michael Gaynor and remained in the family for 5 generations before being sold to Bean Snappers in 1993. Throughout documented history, the building has been hit 4 times and burned twice, with 4 recorded deaths on the property.
Some of the most notable paranormal claims that we have documented are a male disembodied voice, a female disembodied voice, objects moving, doors opening and closing, lights turning on and off, knocking in response to questions, the sound of someone sitting down next to you on furniture, physical interactions including being touched, hairbrushed, and scratched, and other unexplained responses to our equipment which include a REM pod, EMF meter, and an obelisk.
Bring your own equipment, or we have some you can use while you're here. Audio and video recording is encouraged. Here is your chance to investigate the paranormal. For the very first timers to the experienced professionals, we can walk you through, or you can take the lead. The time is yours. Ask your questions and get your answers. Limited space is available for tours, so make sure you purchase your tickets in advance at wisconsincaps.com. Click on the Gainers Tavern link under public events. All right, we're back here on this episode of Whispers from the Dark. I am here with Curio, and we're talking about
DID? Or are we still in Chromesthesia?
Chromesthesia.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I was at Chrome something, and I lost the rest of that there. And joining us now is Amicus. How are you doing, man?
Hi, I'm doing all right. A little cold, but doing
cold.
pretty well.
Good. We are out here shivering, looking at colors in the park still. So you were talking to me during the break here about other forms of chromesthesia and stuff.
Yeah, so we just finished talking about how Curio has chromesthesia, which is just sound to color, and there's multiple other different types. Some people can see colors as hear colors as sound. Some people, but the most common form is just either tasting what you smell or smelling what you taste. That's a very common kind of in between. A lot of people experience the smelling to taste kind of thing, just because they're two very close senses, I guess, because it's all about perception. Which is why with COVID and whatnot, when someone catches COVID and they lose their sense of smell, they also tend to lose their sense of taste along with it. I haven't researched a lot. I think I've done a little more than Curio has, just because I was like, wow, these are really cool, because I get like really, really invested in psychology for a whole like 2 weeks. So I learned a lot about it, and I never touch it again.
Yeah, I do that as well. I actually have what you were talking about with the, like you can smell a taste or taste a smell sometimes. And also I have, I don't know what this is, maybe one of you guys do. When I smell something or I taste something, it brings me back to a memory.
That's also a very real form of synesthesia. Basically, it's any one of your senses that connects to another sense or something else very important in your brain. So it could be a memory. A lot of people, when eating like mom's home-baked food, they remember their childhood or childhood memories that go along with the food. That's very popular and very real. I don't know, just basically any two senses you can connect.
It's all based around perception and association. If you associate something with something else and you perceive them to be very similar, then oftentimes like they kind of get confused. And I don't know, it's very neat how that works, and how, I mean, little the world around you can actually be familiar to someone else, because like you perceive the world in a very different way than some other people do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Definitely.
some colorblind people don't even realize they're colorblind until like way into their 30s or 40s, when someone points at something and is like, that kind of looks like this color. And they go, no, those are very different colors.
Like the whole dress and shoe situation that was on Facebook a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's all in perception and stuff. Very interesting. So, the other thing we were going to talk about today
Yes.
is DID. Can you tell us what that is?
DID stands for dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called split personality or multiple personality disorder. That's what most people know it as. It just basically means that due to heavy and repeated trauma in your childhood, your brain splits off into a bunch of little different forms of basically yourself to help you cope with that trauma. And they can either hold and remember that trauma for you so you don't have to, and you can still go through day by day without having to relive that every day. I don't know, it's just kind of like a coping mechanism that your brain comes up with as a kid, and usually it's developed before the age of 9 or 10. But most people don't realize that they have it until sometime after puberty, and it takes at least a year to get professionally diagnosed for it. So. And
both of you have it, correct?
I do not have DID. I have OSDD1B, which is similar, very similar. The only difference really being, unlike DID, which one of the requirements is to have amnesia, I don't have amnesia between alters. My alters have a shared memory that gets very blurry in times of stress, but for the most part, we still remember everything that we do, whereas between them, if one alter is fronting one day and I tell them something, the other alter won't remember it.
Okay, let's take a quick break here and go through some vocabulary, because
Okay,
I've
I'm
had this
sorry.
discussion already. No, you're good. So, an alter, can you explain kind of what that is?
Just, it's one of your other personalities. It's just one of the people that lives inside your head, which sounds crazy, but that's what it is.
So basically, it's just another complete personality. Like, they're all different. They all have their own likes, feels, emotions.
Mm-hmm. Preferences for things, like political views or like opinions on controversial topics or sexualities. Like, some can be completely interested in men, and others completely interested in women alone. They have, they identify differently. Like, some use only he, him, and some use only she, her pronouns. They're just completely different people. Like, I see them more as completely different people than a part of myself, which is how I think they prefer it, so.
And the other term I want to get out of the way is fronting.
Yeah, that just basically means the personality or alter that is I almost said that is fronting. That is controlling the body, I guess.
Okay.
It's just the person that's doing all of the actions and doing all the talking and stuff like that. Although you can have more than one fronting, it's just then it gets to feel cramped. You feel cramped in your head, and you have a harder time controlling or talking, or sometimes you talk out loud when you're not when you don't mean to talk out loud. You meant to keep it in your head. Stuff like that.
Okay. I think that covers vocabulary, and we can continue then.
Okay.
I mean, we've had this discussion prior, so like I'm pretty familiar with this stuff. But these are things that when we were first talking about this, I was like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, like I've known other people that have kind of had this and talked about that before, so I was a little bit. But I assume like most of our audience and stuff isn't going to know what that is. So, thank you for clearing that up. So how do the two of these differ the most? Like,
It's mostly just the amnesia. Like,
Right.
I remember things a lot better than they do, although their memory tends to be a little more clear just because my memory tends to blur things if I want to forget them, whereas they tend to put it into a different alter that will remember it almost crystal clear for the rest of eternity so they can be traumatized by it forever.
that sounds amazing. Not. Cool. Well, not cool, I guess. So we can get in as deep into this as you guys want and are comfortable with, and if there's something you don't want to answer, I mean, just, it's your personal lives, and I don't want to dig as deep, as what you want to share and what you don't want to share. So first of all, let's talk about this. Curio, how many do you have alters?
There's no certain way for me to say. I don't actually know how many I have, but if I had to guess, it'd be around 45, because that's how many I can confirm. I don't actually know how many I have. There's really no telling, because there's a word in the DIT community. They use dormant. It just basically means an alter that is a fully functioning alter. They're just kind of shut away for a while. I don't really know what they do when they're shut away, but they just kind of get shut away, and they don't talk to anyone, and they don't front. They just don't come out. But that also hinders me from knowing exactly how many there are. So
That's fair. And you?
I have 6.
All right. And we were talking, I find this very interesting. When we first spoke about this, you were saying that not all of them are human.
Right. So you can have non-human alters, and it's basically just caused by, like, if you grew up being super religious, or your parents were super religious, or you have religion-related trauma, you can develop alters that are angels or fallen angels or demons or Satan or God, or believe that they're a deity, things like that. I have one alter that's a demon, and then one alter that is a hybrid angel and demon. They're two vastly different people, but
I can imagine.
but it's just mostly because of religion-related trauma. It's I don't know.
You?
When it comes to angel and demon kind of alters, or just non-humans in
Just
general?
any in general, yeah.
All right, so I've got 2 ex non-human alters. They slowly became more human. I'll try and explain that. And I have got one kind of human alter, which I'm a little ashamed of, just because I'm not a furry by any means. However, I do have one cat boy in my head, and it's a little embarrassing. But I have 2 of my most prominent alters. One that kind of is like Mr. Order, I guess. He's kind of like top of the chain. He's like he's like the CEO, I guess, is the best way you can describe him. He's very businesslike and very emotionless, very kind of get things done kind of way. And the other one's very spiteful and angry because he's just kind of an amalgamation of all the I guess he's supposed to be something along the lines of emotions that I've thrown away and not tried to like repress and shit. But they each used to be a fallen angel and a banished demon. Well, one that was like banished from hell and the other that fell from heaven. Although as time went on, they slowly became more human. And now there's no remnants of them having been an angel or a demon like at all anymore. And that's probably something to do with me I used to go to church all the time, and then I just kind of fell out of going to church, and I never went again, and I assume it's got something to do with that. I couldn't tell you, though.
I have a bunch of non-human alters. I don't really have a reason for all of them. I could probably give a reason if I dig for it, but the ones that I can't explain are the demon and the half demon. Otherwise, I have a goblin, or what, I don't know, they call themselves a goblin. And then I have a half goblin. Really can't explain that one either.
What's the other half?
Human.
Okay. Just since you brought it up.
And then I have like 3 ghosts, and I have a human who grows mushrooms off of him. I don't know if that makes sense. He's sort of like a mushroom guy. And then I have a guy who has bird wings, big bird wings. I have a guy who's basically the embodiment of fear. He is just an amalgamation of every phobia under the sun.
He's also really, really nice.
He's strangely nice. It's really funny. Other than that, I don't know. I just have a lot of non-human alters. Half my system is probably human, but the other half is not. And I could probably go on like 20 minutes just talking about all the non-humans.
I believe it.
I forgot dead people don't count as people, so I've also got one ghost in my head.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to ask about this. So when, in my field of paranormal and cryptids and stuff like that, a ghost, we were not really sure what they are. Mm-hmm. So when you guys are saying that you have a ghost as an alter, how do you differentiate the ghost as being not human then?
I can't really say that they're not human. I just, normally when I think human alters, I think just the ones that are alive, and I don't really associate ghosts with that. I have no idea why. I'm not saying that they're not human. I'm just saying that I associate them completely different, and I kind of group them with the non-humans.
Interesting. You?
So specifically for me, my ghost used to be alive, and in the time that he was an alter, he ended up killing himself because he participated in a lot of self-harm, because he was very depressed. Although you wouldn't have guessed that from his personality. You still wouldn't guess it from his personality. But at one point, it just went too far, and he died. And now he's a ghost, but he's still alive. Or not? He's not alive, but he's still an alter that's actively in my head. I guess a lot of my alters like to move around and change what they are, because this is the third one that's done that. I also forgot to mention that I'm not quite human myself. I'm like a shadow. I've got no mouth. I got 2 white eyes, and the rest of me is like pure black. But I still consider myself human. In fact, I identify with the body the most, as a very common thing with DID and OSTD is that you don't associate yourself with your own body. In fact, you sometimes will look in the mirror and go, "Who is that? What the fuck?" Because you wake up and you see someone that's doing everything you're trying to do, and it's not you. But I experience that significantly less than they do. So if you want information on that, you got to ask them.
Let me ask you a question, because you said something there that kind of put a little light bulb in my head, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody here listening at home or anything. When you talk about looking in the mirror and not seeing yourself, do you think that some of the people that are like transgender or feel like they're not the right person in that body, do you think that is an alter in them?
Could be, but DID and stuff like that, it's very, very, very rare case, and I doubt that it's going to be the case for everybody. I wouldn't assume that if you look in the mirror and you're like, man, I don't think I'm really a woman or something like that, then don't automatically assume you have DID. there's a lot of other things that go into DID than just not associating yourself with your body. But it's a very similar experience.
Yeah. So growing up, I was I was born intersex, but then I had surgery when I was a baby that made me more female.
Can you describe what intersex means?
It's also known as hermaphrodite. I basically was just born with an elongated clitoris, so I had, and like my reproductive organs are a little like screwed up and grown in wrong, so I can't safely have a child, and I was just basically born with a vagina and a penis.
Okay. Yep.
But as a baby, I was, I don't know the right word for that, snipped back. Just kind of like made more female. And so going through puberty, I thought that I was a trans guy, and I was very confident on it until I heard about DID, and I thought of it as a possibility. Then I brought it up with my therapist, and then we worked on it. And she considered it a very real possibility, and we worked on it a lot, and I got diagnosed with it, and it just turned out that I wasn't actually a trans guy. I just had a lot of male alters, so I constantly saw myself as male, but I just never was. So I guess trans people could confuse their transgenderness for having an alter, or vice versa. They could think that they have an alter, but they actually just might not be. They just might be a singlet and just be transgender. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't mean anything bad about transgender or anything that
no.
saying it's a mental disorder or something, but it's just curious because you said, you look in the mirror and you see not you, and you hear that a lot with the transgender community and stuff, that they're looking in the mirror and that's not who they are inside or, who they feel. So I was just wondering. But
yeah, I think what he was referring to was more like depersonalization, where you just don't really, you don't really associate yourself with who you are. And I don't know. Can you explain depersonalization better?
So you ever have a really bad day, right? And you just, you wake up the next morning and you don't want to go on, and you get up and you look in the mirror and all you see is your body going through the motions. You don't see you just see this kind of hollow shell that once was you, right? It feels very much like that, except sometimes even you get to the point where you don't even recognize that as your body. You just see a body that you are in. Does that help?
Yeah, kind of.
It's very similar to derealization, where nothing feels real to you and you have an absurd view of reality, or you might perceive it differently than everyone else. That's derealization. It's depersonalization is just like that, except it's just how you see yourself and who you are and your own identity, rather than the world around you, I guess.
Cool. So let's talk about as much as you're comfortable with. So when you first had the first alter appear, can you tell us what happened and we were talking. Well, let me ask you this first before we get into that.
Yep.
You were talking about it usually happens before puberty or right around that time is when that takes place. Is this something that can happen later in life as well?
Normally, no. There are very, very rare cases, but for the most part, you can only develop it before puberty, just because that's when your brain is still developing and it's still growing. That's why you got to be really careful when you're handling children or when you're raising children, because they are more susceptible to having traumatic disorders like PTSD and stuff like that. They're just more susceptible to a lot of mental disorders based on how they grow up.
it should also be noted that PTSD and DID have a lot in common. In fact, sometimes they're even considered as like almost brother or cousin disorders, with DID just being significantly rarer.
So what I was getting at with this is, like people that go to war and they have, the PTSD and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for someone that, saw combat or something to get DID?
I think it's possible. I'm not a doctor, so I don't actually know. Because when I looked into my DID, I looked more into the childhood trauma, because that's where mine came from. You'd have to do your own research.
Sounds good. That's fair. Okay, so going back to whatever you're comfortable with, can you kind of talk about the first time that this happened, when you first became aware of it?
I call it the Big Bang. Like that's what like caused it. But basically, I was in preschool, and my parents weren't really there for me. I was about 5. They just kind of like sent me to daycare, and then while my mom went to school and my dad went to work. And when I got home, my parents never really like looked after me. They kind of just let me fend for myself, and they never cleaned up after me. They kind of just expected me to do all of that at the age of 5. But I was a toddler, so I didn't really understand. So I was just kind of like buried in my own filth in my own bedroom. And like in school, I never made any friends. I was kind of the weird outcast kid because I have other genetic mental disorders and physical capabilities that I struggled with in preschool. So I got bullied for it a lot. I never made any friends. So just one day I was getting like beaten up on the playground, and I was just, I don't know, I had a bunch of events leading up to that too that just made it like 10 times worse. And I think something in my brain just snapped, and like the rest of my day was just completely blocked out. And I don't know, I think that's when my first alter came in, because I don't really remember what happened exactly after that. But after that, I started hearing like an extra voice, because I have schizophrenia on top of this. So I started hearing something extra, and it was really absurd, but it was a lot kinder than everything else that was going on in my head. And a lot more personable, like you could actually talk to them. So I started talking to them, and I don't know, it just kind of progressed from there. And then it got to be like I was hyper aware of it, but I thought it was just linked to my schizophrenia as a kid. But I would also have these amnesia blocks, and then like the things in my head would tell me that like what they did that day, and what I should do next. And it just like didn't really make sense until like I hit middle school, and then I started going through therapy for it. And then my therapist was like, well, you might be hyper aware of it because of your schizophrenia, so it might be because of that. This could be just your schizophrenia making up delusions, but it's very possible that you could just have DID. And then we worked on it, and then I got diagnosed with it, like as a separate thing. So I have schizophrenia and DID, which makes it really hard a lot of the time, because I don't know what's delusions, and I don't know if they're actually speaking to me sometimes. But basically now every traumatic thing that happens or extremely stressful thing happens, I just split, and more alters come out, or something could happen and an alter goes dormant, or something could happen and alters integrate, like 2 or more alters combine into one, and then they have like shared memories, or like shared personalities. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. I think mine just started at the age of 5 when I was getting pummeled on the playground.
Well, I'm sorry for that.
No, it's okay.
So a couple questions on that. You're saying that we were all kind of talking about the fact that part of DID is the amnesia of what your last altar did or whatever, and you kind of touched on like it seemed like they kind of gave you a debriefing when they switched over. Then,
yeah. Basically, I just was like, God, I can't go back to school. I can't do this, and I would just have like meltdowns before school. Like I couldn't handle going to school because I couldn't handle seeing the people every day and dealing with the teachers who seemed like they were always mad at me, and I couldn't deal with the kids who always like called me names or stole things from me or kicked me or did things like that. So I would just like have meltdowns. But then I think because of how distressing it was just to go to school, I developed a couple alters that helped with school and going to school. So then I just like started having the block out like the first half of my day where it's like get up, get dressed, go to school. And then later my brain was just like, okay, so you did the first 3 classes and you have a few assignments and you talk to a few people and just like a basic briefing rundown, and then I just don't hear from them for the rest of the day. But it makes going day by day a lot easier. But it really sucks when you can't remember a lot of things that happened because they'll give a debriefing and sometimes they'll miss something. And then like 3 weeks later, I realize that I have an essay that's due. Things like that. Or people come up to me and they're like, so hey, about what we talked about yesterday. And I'm like, shit, I don't remember talking about anything. Or they're like, hey, do you still want to come over after school? And I'm like, did I say I was going to? Or sometimes people say that I did things that I didn't actually do and no one in my head did, and they all said that they didn't do it. So it's so then I'm just like, well, then who did you hear this from? I don't know.
I can see how that would be very frustrating.
It's frustrating. I don't really know how to better explain it than that.
No, that was good. One more question for that. So have you ever experienced, like, we'll get to you in a second.
Sorry.
Have you ever experienced, so obviously, how do I want to say this? Do any of your alters know things that you didn't learn?
Yes.
And let me preface that first by ruling out any non-human alters. Like, we don't want to know what the kingdom of God or, like the underworld or the fairy kingdom looks like. Because obviously we can't justify that,
You mean like basic skills?
Yeah, like is one of your alters severely good at math that you never learned, or science or something like that?
I had one that integrated a few years ago. His name was Thomas, and he was exceptionally good at instruments. His special interest was marching band, so we did marching band, and he learned the clarinet and the saxophone and the guitar and the piano and just like basically a bunch of instruments. And that's all he did in his free time, was just play instruments and just learn music and learn how to read sheet music and then learn like music theory and stuff like that. And then he integrated when we were trying to purposefully integrate a couple other alters. He got caught up in the mix and accidentally integrated with them. So I no longer have the capabilities of playing any of those instruments except maybe clarinet. But that's because that was just our instrument in school, like regularly. So other alters also learned how to play that.
That's fascinating. So when you said that, like, was he like naturally good at that? Like he could do it, or did you still have to learn how to, like, for instance, saxophone? Like, could you just pick it up and play it, or did you have to actually learn it and then know it?
I think we actually had to learn it and know it for most of the instruments. I'm pretty sure that he could just pick up and play guitar and piano, or at least that's what it seemed like. But the rest of it, I know that he did actually practice and work on playing those. And he was pretty good. And he basically substituted for a lot of kids in marching band that couldn't make it, and we were lacking in certain areas. Our band director would just point us to a certain a portion and just be like, hey, can you play this today? And I'd be like, yeah, I can. Seems easy. Then I do it. But then I lost the capability. And I didn't really know how to tell her. So a lot of the time after that, after Thomas was gone, I just kind of like started bullshitting my way through it and pretending that I could do it, and I just couldn't. But he's the reason that we got into honors band, and I think I'm pretty proud of that.
You should be. All right. So let's hear your origin story. When did you first realize that something was off or that you had other things going on here?
I didn't know until sophomore year of high school. I had no clue. As far as I know, at the very least, I only had 2 alters for a majority of my childhood, and this is my best speculation because I can't actually confirm or deny if there were more at any point. And this is, I found out because in sophomore year, I started to finally get kind of more comfortable with my life, and I used to struggle with having friends a lot. When I was a kid, I had a lot of doubts in my memory because I would say I remembered something, and then everybody that I knew would immediately disagree that ever happened. And then I'd go and I'd talk to people that I know were there, and like if they weren't in the immediate group of people I had talked to, they would be like, yeah, I remember that happened. And it just kind of drove me crazy as a child. Like, if you could imagine doubting everything you knew, being like whether or not this person, if you should trust this person or if you shouldn't trust your own memory, it's a very confusing state to be in constantly. And it kind of sucks that I'm still in that scenario. But I've gotten a little. I've surrounded myself with better people. I've gotten myself in better situations. A lot of the people around me have bettered themselves. So I really have to thank them for that. That helps significantly. And I don't know. I can't tell you when it comes to like as a child what was specifically a thing or not. I can tell you that me and the main the big business CEO man Arid were around for a majority of my life. I don't know which one of us is the core, Amicus or Arid. I couldn't tell you which one came first, but we go together like peanut butter and jelly. And I am very good and funny and smart and cute and whatever, and he is very on top of things. He's very like I'm smart and like I can come up with clever witty jokes. I can quick explain something. I know like a lot of basic trivia. I can do like pretty like not super hard math pretty quickly. He can figure things out that we haven't learned before just by applying principles we've learned before. Like he can look at an equation that we don't know, take some basic bits of info that he does know, and try and figure out how to solve it from there. He's a lot smarter than me. He's a lot more cold than I am too, though. Like he doesn't care as much as about how you feel. If he doesn't want to hang out with you, he'll just tell you he doesn't want to hang out with you, and where I'll come up with a reason so that you don't feel like you've just pissed me off. But in sophomore year, when I started finally getting comfortable, I wasn't paying as much attention to academics. You know, I was finally getting friends. I was finally starting to spend time with these friends. I was finally starting to have fun. And then a bunch of assignments hit me at once, and I wasn't able to keep up with all of them because I was also trying to keep up with my friends. And then I started falling behind. And I put a lot of pride into academics when I was a kid. And so this really, really destroyed me when I was I'd never failed an assignment in my life, right? In fact, the only like spelling test I'd ever gotten less than 100% on was in 2nd grade when I was so hungry I wrote snack instead of snake. I tried really hard in school. I got a letter from President Obama for it was like some printed out letter, so it wasn't like, oh, he's a gifted kid. No, I was just like top of my class in elementary school, so I got this printed letter from the president, and they were like, here's your little reward, and I was like, cool, this guy, he's the president. I didn't know him. But in sophomore year, with all that weight crashing down on me, I guess whatever system Arid and I had going for the longest time kind of fell apart, and that's when we became aware of each other, was because suddenly the kind of flow of from this to this to this to this got disrupted by me kind of taking over everything, and then academics crashing, I crashed, and then suddenly there were like conversations going in my head as opposed to me just talking to myself out loud, because I talk to myself out loud a lot, and that was just to reason things out. I heard that's a very common thing between like critical thinkers, where like their way of thinking will normally be keeping their thoughts outside of their heads so they don't get mixed up. And then like when I started hearing another voice in my head that wasn't mine, I was like, why is he so pissed at me? But not shortly after I became aware of Arid, Damien became a thing. I don't know if he was an alter beforehand or if he split off because of a lot of emotional stress I was going through with a different friend group, in which a friend who I didn't really know super well, so I don't know why I did this, but he told me he was suicidal and he had attempted suicide the night before, and the only reason he didn't kill himself was because his cat walked in his room and he didn't want to kill himself in front of his cat. And I blamed myself for his attempt at suicide. And as a mentally ill, 16-year-old, that is the worst possible thing you can ever do. Don't ever blame yourself for somebody else's own, feelings about the world and their place in it. It's not your fault unless, you actively hurt them and caused that. But 9 times out of 10, if you're feeling guilty about it, you didn't hurt them, not on purpose at the very least. And if you didn't do it on purpose and you apologized for it before, it's not your fault. It's very far from your fault. But that's kind of what triggered my awareness of what was going on in my head, and also triggered my third alter ever. And I only had 3 alters for the longest time. I only developed the last 3 over the course of quarantine.
That'll do it.
It was a combination of I lost all my friends. I started struggling a lot in school. Like, I just recovered myself from sophomore year. I managed to pass sophomore year by the fucking skin of my teeth. And then I got to junior year and I started kind of getting myself back together again. I was becoming more confident in who I was, and then COVID hit and gone. And it was probably the worst experience I've ever it was awful. But that kind of sums up everything about my origin of my system. It's not much.
That's a word we haven't covered. System.
System is essentially just kind of it's a person with DID, in their group of alters, are referred to as a system, and I think it's mostly called a system because they have a system on how they do things, right? You have one that goes to school, you have one that handles friends, etc., etc., etc. They each kind of have their own thing, and they work together as a system.
So I have a question about you were talking about when you were talking to your friends that some of them wouldn't remember something that happened. Do you think that they were doing that on purpose to hurt you, or what was the gist of that?
It wasn't really my friends, it was mostly my family, and I think a lot of it was that specifically my mother. My mother was my biggest parent role in my life, right? My mother had this small issue where she got prescribed, not diagnosed, prescribed an opioid of some sort, and I'm not sure what kind of problems it might have caused once she became addicted to it, because she didn't actually need it. The doctor gave it to her and was like, no, this will help you. After she was like, I've been prescribed this before, it didn't help that much, and they were like, no, you just keep taking it. And because the doctors kind of pushed it on her, she became addicted to it. And I'm not sure what kind of issues it might have caused. I don't think a lot of it was on purpose. I think she just wasn't prepared to have kids, and at the time also wasn't quite ready as an adult to be taking care of children in general. So she had a lot of kind of shortcomings, and that led to a lot of denial of things, and always a belief that she was right. So even when she couldn't remember something, she would still kind of force that it was, yes, that this didn't happen because I don't remember it happening. And then she would get other people to agree with her, and that would be an issue. So a lot of the time, in order to what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of keep my own sanity, I talk to my brother behind everything, and we just kind of keep each other sane by confirming, yes, this happened, yes, you didn't break that, because we could tell her the truth, right, about something. I could tell her that I broke something, and she wouldn't believe me and tell me that Jonah broke it instead, because Jonah has a history of breaking things because he had he's had some issues. But he used to break things a lot. He still breaks things a lot. He's a little clumsy. And so sometimes when things are broken, if he was telling the truth that he didn't break it, and I was telling the truth that I did, she would be like, no, Tony, do not try and take the fall for him. Your brother broke this. And I can't... Sorry, I got very lost in my own head there.
You're all right. You're good. You're good. All right, so we do have a couple of questions that have come up. One of which is, can you change alters on purpose? Can you specifically bring out one that you want to handle a situation or something like that?
Yes. However, there are a lot of times repercussions. Sometimes it's just mentally draining to switch, no matter if it's on purpose or not. Could be tiring. They could not want to be in that situation. You might just have to tough it out, because even though you don't want to be in that situation, you shouldn't put somebody else through that same situation. Yeah. But you could do things to like bring other alters out. A very common one is music. Listening to certain genres of music or certain songs specifically, or certain artists that is very connected to a certain alter. That could draw them out. It could also be things like as broadly as just eating in general, because sometimes people with eating disorders, it could just be a chore. So certain alters will eat just because like it's an alter split just so that way the body can eat, because no one else will do it. But it could also be something super specific, like one of my friends has a system, and he has a super specific trigger for one alter, where if he eats a pink rock candy on a hot day, it's like the perfect trigger for a certain alter, and it sounds really goofy, but obviously it worked, and it worked really well. But I don't know, certain people could also be triggers for certain alters. I have a couple alters that come out specifically when a certain friend comes over to hang out every week, or like if one of my alters is in a relationship with someone, they're more likely to be triggered to front when that person is around, or when that person is brought up in a conversation, stuff like that. But a very popular trigger is music. Music, people, and foods tend to be my top ones. It could also be like locations, like school. Mm-hmm. Like if you have an alter that does school related stuff, as soon as you step into school, that alter could start fronting, or around family, or at home, or at certain friends' houses, or at other people's houses if they're like if they're like abusive. You could have an alter that deals with just them and endures their abuse for the duration of your stay at their house, stuff like that. I don't know, those are just examples.
You're asking me for my triggers?
Yes. Do you have anything to add?
I can't. First and foremost, I cannot force certain alters to front. I lack this ability. I'm not entirely sure why. I just can't will someone to the front. It often feels like the difference between me and their system also is that their seal is much more solid than mine does. It's more like each alter is their own little block, and you can bring the block to the front or you can take it out, right? And if you put too many blocks in the same room, the room gets very crowded. Whereas sometimes it feels like mine's more liquid, where I can't always tell you what exactly is there. They can tell you who's fronting more often than I can, and they have issues where too many people are fronting and I don't even know who it is half the time, right? Whereas I can guess at who's fronting based off of personality, and oftentimes it's more than one person all the time, because most of my triggers are situations and relations, as I just about 10 seconds ago thought that was probably the nicest way to put it, was because it's not school that triggers me, it's the learning environment that triggers me. So I can be in school, I can be totally fine, and then the teacher comes forward and then Aaron's fronting, right? And I'm not in school anymore, so I don't know quite how that's going to work out, but Relations also is a thing where I can be at home totally fine, right? Friend comes over, amicus fronts. Family comes over, family talks to me, arid comes to the front, right? And it's just kind of like that. And a lot of my other alters have different kinds of triggers. It's just that they don't front as often as amicus and arid do. Derek and Damien are, I guess, the second most prominent kind of duo, but that's just because they have their own kind of smaller triggers, and then there's Pip and Kitten, who don't really front at all.
Kitten, I love it.
He's the only one that named himself. I got to name all the rest because we don't come with names. We all like consider ourselves Tony to a varying degree, but we also consider ourselves different from the rest, and it gets very confusing to have a bunch of different Tonys. So you got Amicus, you got Arid, you got Derek, Damien, Pip, and Kitten, and I didn't get to name Kitten. Kitten just decided to stick with that name, and I...
Awesome. So here's the other question that we have is, when you guys switch, does it hurt? Like you were saying, it was kind of exhausting and stuff to try and switch, or...
I wouldn't say that it's physically painful, but it could be. Like, you could switch in the middle of something, and you lose control of what you're doing, and you accidentally hurt yourself.
Okay.
I've done that in art class where I slipped up with a sculpting tool, and I hurt myself pretty bad. There's been times where I've been driving, and I don't really realize where I'm going, and I just kind of like dissociate as I'm backing out, and I bump into something, or like backing out of the driveway or going down the highway. Things like that are really frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I used to work at an ice cream shop, and you'd put the ice cream in the blender, but you have to mix it, like you have to hold the cup with your hands in the blender. There's been a few times where I've gotten stuck in the blender and hurt myself pretty bad. Fortunately, I got to keep all my fingers, but...
That's good.
I mean, it could be painful, but like if it's just a normal switch, for the most part, for me at least, it's just really tiring sometimes. But I mean, a lot of the time, if I have had enough sleep and I have a good enough diet, I feel fine. Sometimes it makes me nauseous if I haven't eaten or if I've eaten too much, but I mean, otherwise I'm fine.
It doesn't hurt for me at all. It's very disorienting. While I've never done this, I imagine it's very similar to what it would feel like if you were very, very drunk, and then the next night you woke up in a place you didn't recognize. Because whenever I suddenly switch, that's what it feels like. Most of the time, though, like I said, it feels like liquid, where it's kind of very fluid, and I don't even realize I switched, or that my personality is different. And sometimes the personality doesn't even like switch as like concretely as I've heard a lot, where it's just kind of like over the next couple minutes, suddenly I'm a different person. Like, it's not just kind of different person, it's just kind of like, oh, and my sense of humor is slowly changing, and it's gone.
Gradual.
Yeah, that's what I feel like it looks like a lot. I mean, obviously, most of the time my head gets kind of foggy around that point, so I can't tell you for sure. You'd have to ask the people that actually spend time with me.
Now, you were saying, too, that yours doesn't have the amnesia with it. So you're basically, when you're any of your alters, you're still kind of aware of everything that's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you do not. You're kind of pretty cut and dry as to what each one remembers.
For the most part, I mean, two alters can share the same memory, because my system does this weird thing where we split in small clusters of 2 or 3. And it's basically just like if one can't cope with the situation, the other ones can help with that coping, and it's sort of like creating like a bond between them. Kind of like how you can relate to your friends and you guys bond over liking the same TV show or something. It's kind of like that. But they bond over having the same like traumatic memories. Otherwise, also, one alter could remember one detail from the same event, and the other one could remember the other details to the same event. So they could split like that. I don't know. Otherwise, it's just pretty cut and dry. They remember their own things, and I'm pretty sure like they're all their own people with their own views and opinions and stuff. But the one thing that makes them very similar is a lot of them share the same memories and trauma and stuff from like just being outside in the body and stuff. I don't know if that makes sense either.
It does.
Sometimes I just say things and I'm like, oh man, but does he understand?
I do. For the most part, I do. And some of that comes from our, 8-hour discussion the other day. So.
Yeah.
So, again, we're coming up on the end of the show here, so I want to kind of touch base with you guys on, you had said that you had gone on Facebook and some other websites and stuff, and found a lot of resources that you found helpful. Can you share anything with that? And we'll definitely put them in the show notes as well for anyone listening.
I don't actually have any great resources off the top of my head, because to be honest, I kind of forgot. But I know that there are a lot of people with DID on like Reddit and Instagram. Those are where I see them the most. Like on Reddit, there's like a whole subreddit just for people with DID or dissociative disorders. And on Instagram, there's a whole DID community. There's a lot of people that have a system and then make a system account where they post their individual alters as well as alter intros where they introduce themselves and they can be themselves freely. And they don't have to pretend to be anyone or mask or just like to please anyone. They could just be like, all right, I'm here and this is my name and this is my age and this is what I identify as and here's a bunch of other facts about me, and then they make friends as themselves, and it's pretty neat. I definitely recommend that systems make a system account on Instagram because there's a huge community. At times it can be dramatic and toxic, but
That's the internet. I've
only ever gotten great things from it. I've gotten a few crappy things from it, but for the most part, I've made a lot of friends, and I can definitely say some of the best people I've ever met has been through the DID community. So,
personally, I'm not super big on like being very public about mine, just because there's a lot more questions than clarification if I were to start explaining it. Because in the end, like, I'm still Tony. I'm just like, there's more parts to me than like there comes to appear, and it's not even super important that you know them, because we all have the same memories as long as you don't super stress me out. Outside of that, there is one very good resource that I did a lot of the research on that for the knowledge that I know about DID, and it's didresearch.org. It's not the most It uses a lot of complicated words, and sometimes you'll have to go and look up, oh shit, what's this disorder, right? But it's got like this list of things so you can like open a certain topic about this, and then look up like different like research and not experiments. Not a lot of experiments get done unless it's like surveys, if you want to count that as an experiment. But like where they kind of keep track of like, this is how common this is where it's most likely to, like, that's how I learned that it really only like develops in between like the ages of like 1 and 9. Like once you get past that point, it's like super rare, and then as like the further you get from that, it's like really fucking rare. And I'm pretty sure like past adulthood, the only way you can get it is if you have some kind of like brain development disorder where you're still developing well into adulthood. It has a lot of resources. It's got a lot of other links to other articles, and I'm sure you'll find it as helpful as I did.
And finally, what advice would you have for someone that is, suffering with this or just trying to understand it?
Definitely do research. You definitely got to look out for what resources you're using. I don't remember any of the ones that I used, but I know that there are a lot of like websites that pretend to know what they're doing or know what they're saying, but nobody that's editing that page is a doctor. So you definitely got to watch out for what you're looking for. I'd recommend also viewing content or from people who have DID, or reading books written by people who have DID, or just reaching out to people with DID and seeing how they're coping with it, and then use that research to better connect yourself with your system if you have DID, or just get knowledge on it in general. Primary sources are going to be a best friend, I think.
They mentioned book, and I remembered a book that I read recently about this, actually. It's called The Fractured Mind. It's about this very successful I think he was an Asian. He's not Asian. But he had a degree in some kind of Asian social sciences or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But it kind of followed his journey as a 40-year-old man who had been going through immense emotional issues and amnesia kind of blackouts as he realizes he has DID, and he has to cope with this well into towards the latter half of his life, in order to kind of lead a kind of happy ending to his life and become functioning, right? Get back to because he was kind of starting to push away the few people that he had around him, right? And it focuses very much on his inner world and the alters within it than his life. That way it's much more educational on his journey with DID as a disorder, as opposed to his journey of life with DID as kind of like a side character.
I believe I have actually heard about that book. So.
I enjoyed it a lot. It was still written like a story despite being nonfiction, so it's very easy for me to get through, as I enjoy fiction stories more so than nonfiction. Any final thoughts? You look like you had something on your mind.
No, just mostly thinking.
Okay. All right, anything else from you?
I can't think of anything else I might like to add. I still think there's a lot more to go over. I don't think we even really touched on how intervals work.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I would encourage, I'm not sure when this is going to air. I encourage all of our listeners, if you have any questions, email wisconsincaps@gmail.com. And if we get a lot of questions, and if you have anything that you'd like to add, maybe we can have a second interview and stuff and cover that as well. And if you find any of your resources and stuff and can send them to me, we'll get those in the show notes as well for anyone out there listening. And we'll get the didresearch.org on there so that people can follow that. And yeah, just be careful where you're looking, and make sure you have good resources and stuff, and not just reading everything that you find online. And I think that goes with anything that we research in today's world.
Yep.
And that, so.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like there's definitely a lot of people out there that have the same conditions and different conditions. And there's a lot of people who want to help you and talk to you. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for freezing out in the winter with us here. And it's a very cold day in April in Wisconsin. So until next time, I'm Barnaby.
I'm Curio.
And I'm Amicus.
Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Whispers from the Dark. To find out more about cryptids, anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, visit us at our website at wisconsincaps.com. That's wisconsincaps.com. There you can find links to all of our social media: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and our Patreon. You will see links to our online store as well, where you can get t-shirts, DVDs, and more. If you click on the public events page, you can find out where you can meet us in person and all the public events we have coming up. If you enjoy our podcast or our YouTube shows, please consider becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/WisconsinCaps. There you can find behind-the-scenes pictures and videos from all of our media, as well as bonus footage and evidence that we have collected. If you have encountered something you can't explain, we want to hear from you. Visit our website and click on Submit a Report on our main screen. You can choose to leave your contact information or simply remain anonymous. You can also reach us via email at wisconsincaps@gmail.com. If you would like to be a guest on our show, please contact us on our Whispers from the Dark podcast page on Facebook, or send us an email at wisconsincaps.com. Remember, to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch or find us.